Let's see. Here we are. We are live. I paid a local band to come up with that intro song, and I don't think I ever said music courtesy of Steve Rossblock and the Party Snakes for that very enthusiastic surf intro.
You know, it's funny. You got that done, and Fuzz, who is not with us tonight, he has access to cheerleaders, but we never get any cheerleaders on our shows. We might get some more following if we got that done.
I don't know. We're two handsome young men, Paul. We get all of the fandom we can handle.
Yeah, we got one viewer right now.
It's probably one of us. But we're here to talk to each other with cameras on.
I mean, at least we don't have Fuzz with a street hockey mask on again.
That's coming. I could put my old iTech on.
No one. Very few people would even know. My TCNJ guys wouldn't even know what iTech was or is.
Yeah, back in the days where not everybody had an airbrush mask,
and
and
Bauer didn't have their own masks, and there were 32 different hockey companies instead of 4 now.
Yeah, it's become a crazy conglomerate, right? And then you get. Before there might have been 32, but a handful of companies just paid the same company to make equipment,
What's funny, there's a somewhat newish company called True Hockey. The whole reason why they even exist as a hockey company is because they made sticks for all the other vendors, and that's what they did. But when they all went overseas, they said, well, we have all the technology, we have all the information, why don't we just make our own sticks? So that's what they did.
They actually I think they're the biggest vendor of golf club shafts too.
Yep.
True Temper. Yeah. I actually really like their sticks. They're just priced me out recently. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're keeping up with the Joneses. All your high end sticks are all 350 and 360 now.
And somehow that's one of your cheaper pieces of equipment.
Mm-hmm.
So we're here to talk the state of affairs for your Philadelphia Flyers. And we've got the trade deadline's going to be coming up soon, right? We just passed the All-Star break. We're halfway through, give or take, right? We've got 41. Do we have 41 games played?
I'm bringing it up right now. They have 51, so you have 31 games left.
So. Letter went out from John Tortorella today to season ticket holders, whatever ones are still left. How many do you think are just corporate, and how many do you think are actually just fans?
That's a great question. I think so. If I remember right, back in the day, you probably had there's 19,000 seats. So I believe you had something like 4,000 or 5,000 season ticket holders, something like that. Maybe close, maybe top out at 7,000, but that's a bit much because you figure every season ticket is two seats. That's 14,000 right there. So it's probably between 5.5, 6.
They never had to market single games.
Nope. No, I'd say probably 9 years ago, it really started to dwindle a little bit. And then it's gotten really, really bad. It hasn't been good.
So that brings us kind of here we are, right? So that was the start is management decides that it's a good idea for it to be a torch-driven letter to those fans still holding on to their tickets. He hits some of the right notes, right? we know we're not really there, but we want to see what these guys have, right? Like a little bit of that in there, a little bit of there's going to be some change. We're going to see where things land. And I think that that's more well received from him, or more trusted. Maybe trusted is a better phrase.
I mean, they're only 6 points out. They're right there, Griff. Come on.
They're in the hunt.
Yeah, they're right there.
They're in the hunt. And I feel like in salary cap leagues, and we'll throw the NFL out because you and I will both say their salary cap isn't real. But in salary cap leagues, mediocre, and especially the low end of mediocre, is like a really bad place to be.
Yeah, I mean, purgatory. You're stuck in purgatory. I think they have to be bold, which we talked about in our text thread. Like, Homer made big bold moves. Clarkey made big bold moves, and all of that sort of just went by the wayside when Hexie took over, because Hexie had the idea of rebuilding through the draft, but the problem is he just completely ignored the NHL team, the NHL roster, which he just flat out ignored it. And you can't just ignore it. You have to either A, gut it, or B, keep it competitive. And by ignoring it, he just allowed, the Giroux and Voraceks to just keep in the Simmons and the Shens to keep it competitive. And then, but then his last season where he completely ignores the goaltending situation. He goes with Brian Elliott and Neuwirth, where Elliott's 78 years old, and Neuwirth has the body of someone who's like 102. That the ghost of the outline of a puck will actually injure him. So he legitimately hurt himself by stepping on a puck once. So, to the surprise of no one, you had, 7 or 8 goalies throughout the year, which is flat out ridiculous. And that's what got him fired. And then, his draft, his drafted prospects, Provorov, Konechny, Sanheim, were either, underdeveloped, or just weren't as good as he thought they were going to be. We still lacked with, and then the whole Patrick, disaster.
So,
and then you sign JVR, so that was his, hey, look, I'm paying attention to the NHL roster. I got the second best scoring winger out there, even though he skates like he's got a, septibus on his back. And wouldn't hurt a fly. And he's got a neon green butt end on his stick. Pretty cool, huh? He's got a giant ass mole on his face. He just, you can't ignore the NHL team. You either got to gut it, or you have to, keep tinkering with it. And he just, there was no bold moves. His good moves were finding teams that take Le Cavalier and, the Timonen trade and the Coburn trade, and he did well with that stuff. But past that, he just he failed miserably with the NHL team. Either gut it, or trying to make it competitive while bringing up the young guys. So.
That and role players.
Hey, Hexie's my idol. Hexie was my idol.
We like Hexie the player.
Yes.
And he's been a decent GM in other places. But I think that where you and I probably agree and maybe disagree at points is I would say we agree you have to build with draft picks, right? They're important parts of your franchise. And I don't think that Provorov, Konechny, and Sanheim, they're not bad for their draft slot. They're not bad for where they were picked.
No.
But if you're going to say you have to build through the draft, I still feel like you've got to make a move to push up or give things up or whatever. You have to, and then that time they do get into the top 5, they take a guy with concerns, right, from their own scouting department, obviously from New Jersey, right? There were hints there. And they take him because he's the consensus guy. 2 years in a row, he's the consensus guy. It's the safe player, and it wasn't safe. I just don't think there's anything that's safe at that age other than maybe your handful of guys, probably Bedard this year and your Crosbys and Ovechkins. But you have to be willing when you get into that top 5 to make a move. And I think Gauthier was a bit of a bold move, right? Like he wasn't a guy that was like a consensus 5 guy, maybe a 5 body type, but not necessarily ranked, right? Like if you look at scouting reports, wasn't that guy. Not that bold, though, of a move. Just an outside the box move. And we had talked kind of late last week, I think it was, about Matvei Michkov, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And your phrase to me was, what I said to our group was, I think a mid-pick team is going to end up with a nice player when he gets to America. And your response right away was, what about the Flyers has said that they would take a not sure thing?
Yeah. I mean, and I don't completely crush Chuck for it yet. The whole York drafting, I still think York is a good player. And I don't think it was more about being safe in terms of not taking Cole Caulfield. I think he saw that he looked at the decor and the cupboard was bare and they needed a high-end defensive prospect. And I think he also understood that someone was going to have to go. And I also think he saw the writing on the wall that that Ghost was going to have to go. So, I don't know. I mean, I don't crush him for it yet because, Caulfield, he's done well over the last calendar year since St. Louis became the head coach of the Canadiens. Has really turned his game around. Now he's hurt. Now he's out for the season, which is better for Montreal because they're going to suck even worse and get a better draft pick. But if York becomes, a very good 3-4D who runs the power play, what they wanted from Ghost, then it's worth it because it's just, some players, some people, some fans think that he's no good and he plays too safe now, which he's just trying to find his way. People forget that, they just expect guys to just come in and just, produce right away, not realizing that it's hard enough for an 18-year-old, 19-year-old forward to do it, a winger to do it. It's way harder for that age of a defenseman to do it because defensemen just take longer. That's just what happens. People don't realize Shea Weber spent like 5 or 6 years in the AHL. Now that's not going to happen today's age, but the point is it takes longer for defensemen to develop and find their way. And then when you take into consideration the giant mess that this organization's been, like what he's being told from management and the coaching staff has changed almost every year. And the pandemic didn't help either, obviously. So, and that's the same thing goes for a guy like Frost. So it's made it even harder for guys to develop. But yeah, I mean, it's funny when you go back to the bold days of Clarkey and Homer when Snyder was around. I mean, they weren't drafting Russians then either, but it had nothing to do about being bold. So Yeah, I mean, Chuck can't be the one making the draft, but ironically, because Torts is keeping the team competitive, um, he's keeping his job. So it sounds inevitable that Chuck's going to be making the call, both at the deadline, which is scary, and even scarier is at the draft. So we'll see. Maybe he surprises us. I mean, he does have a history of taking a guy like Kaprizov, who he knew wouldn't come over for a couple of years. And Minnesota is benefiting from that now. If they didn't have him, they would really be in a really bad situation. So he's a game breaker, and the Flyers need exactly a guy like that. So I don't know. I guess part of me wants to still believe that maybe he could do something good, but he's been slinging turds at us in the last couple of years. So all we can expect more right now is more turds.
So to your point about defensemen, if you look really outside of the Hayes move, Ristolainen, Niskanen, Braun, I'm missing a name here. Oh, geez. Yeah. They've done a lot of trying to reshuffle.
Yep.
The top four, really, not your bottom pair, right? Like,
well, they've Ellis, and they've tried to do is fill in around Sanheim and Provorov to make them work, and it's apparent that both of them can't work. I still think Sanheim's a good player. He's not a first pair D. I think Provorov can be a first pair D with a good partner. But especially with all of the issues internally. But there have been rumors of that going on for some time, which is why his name's been on the trade block for quite some time, at least in the rumor mill. So I think he's going to be dealt. Whether it's this year or in the summer, Lord knows what we'll get back besides cap space.
I would imagine more of a hockey trade than just a cat.
That's what you hope, but
yeah, you're not going to get what you expected from him, right?
Yeah.
Like you're just not. That's just not going to happen.
After a good start, D'Angelo's really he hasn't been good.
No, but I feel like D'Angelo and Ghost, we've tried this offensive defenseman, kind of not gonna like. It hasn't been working with the players that they're playing with. Like I just don't know if it's the issue with Provorov and he feels handcuffed when he has to just be a stay-at-home defenseman. I don't know if it's when you try putting him with Sanheim and he, like that, then it's a mess. Like for whatever reason, these like fully offensive-minded defensemen, it's really been a disaster here. Now, I can't beat anybody up for last year, right? Like Yandel was at the end. I'm not gonna beat Yandel up for being at the end of his career. But it just doesn't seem to be.
It ain't his fault they offered him a contract.
No, I can't blame him. And they put him in a role just like they did with Braun 2 years ago, in a role that it's just not where he is in his career. It wasn't a fair ask. So to your point, like this dials back to York, where it goes, it's harder to get defensemen. Well, look at what they've done, because they've not gotten the highest of end guys, and they've been trying to spackle piecemeal and put it back together with silly string and toothpicks, and
yeah, they've gritty trying to hold it all together with his paws.
Yeah, pretty much. And yeah, they're lacking high-end scoring. Like that's apparent. But the defense hasn't been horrible, but they're still lacking. They're still lacking there because they're resting too much on goaltending,
Yep.
which, look, goaltenders get hot, they get cold, even the best ones do. And when you're asking too much night in, night out, they get hurt. That's just what happens with today's equipment, I feel like. Um, and the dynamic moves that goaltenders make these days. So, um, to your point, really is I get it, right? Like we all wanted the sniper at that time. I don't think that they were a Cole Caulfield at the year of that draft away, from competing, and I don't think that they're a Cole Caulfield away this year from competing. So the reality is like he's a nice player. It seems like he's going to be a very good player. That's not what they're missing. They're not missing very good players. They're missing great players.
Yep.
They just don't have that. And they had it for some years with Giroux, like they had it for a long time. And, but I still feel like that was like we've been piecemealing defense and partners for like other guys and not really done a good job in both departments, right? Like that's just
No,
what it
it's
feels like.
what it comes down to personally, and this is what makes it so frustrating. That you trade away a draft pick for D'Angelo. He's not a guy you trade away. Like he's not a guy you trade assets for. He's a guy that you can sign as a free agent. The money was fine. 2 years, perfectly fine. If at the deadline, for a guy that can run a power play, and you can get some assets back, but like you don't want to wash. You don't want to be washed on the assets. You want to be plus. Or if he works, then you keep him. But like it's obviously it's not working, and it just again going back to the plan, they don't
Plan.
plan. We talking about a plan? Hold on, I got a napkin in my back pocket.
Yeah, pretty much.
Brutal, just brutal.
Well, I feel like when you look back, right, and then we'll get on to the next topic, but when you look back, it was like you had to give up assets to move Ghost. You got nothing back aside from cap space, but you had to move picks, right? And then you get maybe a better version, but a similar player. And you had to give up assets to get that player. So when you look, I know that, what's the pay difference between D'Angelo and Ghost? It's relatively insignificant.
D'Angelo right now is making, I believe, $500K more. So I think Ghost was at 4.5, and D'Angelo's at 5.
Right. So, and you had to give up assets to get rid of the 4.5. And you know me, like I've made jokes about how everybody is like all over Ghost's point totals when he's playing in a college stadium, but the reality is it's sloppy. It's sloppy. It's making moves for today and not ever thinking about tomorrow when they're not they haven't been in a win now mode for a little bit, other than the illusion of 2020. They haven't really been in a win now mode to be trading away picks like that, even if they are, late first, early seconds. And on top of it all, you don't really have much to show for it, right? So, like, I don't know. Like, when I look back and we've talked about the bold moves, I just think sometimes you learn the wrong lessons. So when the Holmgren, when Pronger's done and the Holmgren thing kind of blows up and you bring Hextall in, it's like we can't keep operating like we were. The cap has made it too restrictive. And they've literally done nothing bold since, other than signing, what's your bold move? Kevin Hayes? JVR?
Hayes is your bold move. And you dealt a pick for him too, so that you could get your exclusive signing window. So they dealt a second to get rid of Ghost. They dealt a first to get Ristolainen. And I'd forgotten how bad the trade for D'Angelo was. So it makes me want to vomit. Carolina received a 4th round pick in 2022, a third rounder in 23, and a second rounder in the 24 draft. You traded a second, a third, and a fourth for a guy that you're probably going to trade. So you get so you deal Ghost a first, 2 seconds, a third, and a fourth
for Ristolainen.
For Ristolainen and D'Angelo.
Well, 3/4 of a season of D'Angelo. They're probably going to deal, right? Like,
I don't think they deal him this year personally.
Next year.
I think it's next year thing.
So for 1 year.
Yeah.
But that's the point, right? That's the point. It's a rudderless, aimless ship. And yeah, Torts has got the guys playing well. But if you're evaluating a manager, right? If you have a manager and you're running a business and they're doing hiring and all their hires they have to fire within 10 months of hire or shorter, you'd be wondering why they're a manager.
Asset management.
That's the right. We all know it's not a secret. You need draft picks. That's how you build out your roster. You need high-end ones in order to get high-end players, but you still need those other picks. You can't just be tossing them away. They don't have the roster to justify it. They should be hoarding picks.
14th overall is what you dealt last year. And you deal 2 seconds. Like, so on average, second round pick is
50-50.
50-50. So that means you dealt away 2 NHL players and basically 2.5 NHL players. Because
at least
between the third and the fourth,
I think you're right. I think you're right. It's probably closer to 60-40 in the second. I know that there's a drop off, like as you get into the tail end of the first and then second, as far as like what are hits and what.
So let's say 2.5 NHL players.
Yeah,
you traded away 2.5 NHL players. Well, 3.5, including Ghost, for a defenseman with giant off ice issues that you theoretically could have signed for no assets in 3 weeks, and then another. Now, granted, the Ristolainen thing. I mean, half the league was trying to get him. Half the league was, and I still believe that him and Sanheim make a solid pair, and there's a role for him. But again, you should have been rebuilding. You should have been seeing what. Just put York there. But they were trying to win stupidly. They were trying to be competitive, not realizing that they're stuck in the muck. And then they end up being horrific without those assets, meaning those assets are worth even more.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. So you end up not this season. This season you have a first and no second. So you end up with next season you have 2 firsts. From the Giroux tree, you get the extra first from Florida.
At least they ain't the Panthers. They're a mess. But yeah. They have more high-end talent than we do, so.
I mean, they had the firepower to make the deal for Tkachuk. You know, yeah. That's if there ever was a Flyers player by play style, the Tkachuk boys are it, but not happening.
Talk about one per. Well, I mean, this year they have. So this draft, you have 2/3 and 2/4.
And then whatever they get back for JVR.
If you get anything for Hayes, if you're able to deal him, probably you're going to get like a 5th for Braun, which replaces the 5th next year if if you're able to get that.
But you're just restocking. That's some of the issue that we're frustrated with is they should be getting picks, not restocking things they gave up for not good
Yep.
enough.
Yeah, I mean, you should have 3/3. You should have 3/4. You should have 2 seconds. Frustrating. So frustrating.
It is because it does affect your ability to maybe move from 7 to 5. If there's a player you really like, it does affect your ability to move from 9 to 7, right?
Or
Like
how
there's
about this?
little
You need a premier NHL defenseman
and offenseman, right? They need both.
If you want to go make a play at Jacob Chicken, if you wanted to do that, you could have.
You could, yes, you could not. You
I
can't
mean,
now. Yeah.
you still could theoretically, but you'd be
No,
cutting off your nose to spite your face.
Yeah. All of it is hamstrung, and that's right. Aggressive retool, rebuild, and to me, it's like if you're not actively building, then you should be actively in not fighting for a playoff spot, right? Like,
Yep.
and while they're only 6 points out, the reality is
they're 12.
They might as well be 50. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Even if they were to get those 6 points and make it into the playoffs, it doesn't matter. All they're doing is taking away draft capital because they're not actually good enough to compete. It's just, like when you're that in where they are, oh, wow, we made the playoffs. We could sell, an extra 2 games worth of tickets. That's about as.
It's funny. They say each playoff home game, the gate is probably what, 2.5 million.
I wonder who would actually show up.
They get close to selling out, but they wouldn't sell out.
Yeah. And they're just, I don't know. It's sad. It's sad. That's all. Like, it's pathetic that they have no one there that's going to push, right? To find a big move. And, I understand you're not going to find an Eric Lindros trade, right? Like that's not happening. You're not going to give up everything to go up and get Bedard. No one's trading that pick away, no matter what package you put together.
Yeah.
That being said,
that's incorrect.
Okay.
There's one team that can go get them.
Who's that? Colorado?
All right, 2 teams. You could offer up McCarr, McDavid. Outside of that, I don't really know who else is getting them. But those players aren't going to be on the trade block anyway. So
no, because you would hope for, and we all think Bedard's going to be special, but your hope is that Bedard is McDavid, right? You already have McDavid. Why,
yep. So do we want to move on to the All-Star game?
I mean, they played an All-Star game.
With what? 5,000 people in the stands?
It's all a waste. I think the news that came out right before the All-Star game was really the news.
Which news was that? Horvat?
No, not the trade news. That viewership's down 22%.
Yeah, it's funny. I was listening to Snow the Goalie the other day, and Sanfilippo had some interesting points, and one of them, he's basically blaming a lot of the issues on the networks, both Turner and especially ESPN. Shocker. And I mean, I didn't realize this because, I myself wasn't paying that close attention, but apparently ESPN in their infinite wisdom were putting Sunday night games on going against Sunday Night Football. Which anyone with a peanut brain, a monkey could pick out a better time slot than that. Like, if you're going to try to put on a nationally broadcasted game, you're not touching any day or night that the NFL is on. Like, know what league you're going up against. No, like you're insane. No nationally broadcasting game should be on during the NFL season. Should be on Thursday Sunday or Monday night. End of story. Because you're going to lose. And and during college football season, you shouldn't be doing it on Saturday either. Because you're going to lose. So, like, it's frustrating. You kind of hope, like, at the same time, so what he was saying was that it's really only down 16%. And another part of the issue is because of the Bruins, because of regional blackouts. And the Bruins are so good, they've been on TNT so frequently. A lot of their games have been blacked out in Boston because they've been watching on Nesson.
Mm-hmm.
So your largest audience to watch that game isn't watching it on a national televised broadcast.
Yeah, they're just like we would.
Yeah. So, like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
I still think that there are other, like, I agree that there are structural problems. There are just structural problems with that television deal and trying to push streaming services that your audience hasn't bought into, right? ESPN Plus and different streaming services. Game start times all not really being staggered. You know, they all pretty much start at the same time. Personally, I feel like football, you get a lot of people who are fans of this sport or the league where they're going to watch no matter if there's one game on, people are going to watch. Doesn't matter who's playing. Where hockey, I don't feel like it has that same thing. It's
no,
more
you don't market your best players, which that's both the league and the Players Association's fault. So no one knows who any of these people are because of the schedule and just because of the sport. And I know a lot of it is for safety reasons and for obvious reasons. So much physicality has been taken out. You don't have the natural rivalries and taking fighting out. I mean, people want to see fights. Like, that's just the way it is. And it's just not the same game. I think the game is better personally, but I understand where you're not going to get some of your niche viewers, your outlier viewers, because they're signing in for they're logging on to see fights and hard physical hockey. And when I go through 82 games with such a condensed schedule, like the product isn't as good. And you have teams that are trying to lose, and that hurts it as well. I don't know. It's difficult. It's not.
Yeah.
There's not an easy answer.
No, because it's multifaceted, right? There are those structural problems with television. There is marketing of stars. There's too many teams for the amount of stars that there are, right?
Yeah.
Like the talent is so, like, I would say that the average, right? Like the game is better. I would agree. Like the level of player is better. The level of skill is better. I don't know that always translates to a more fun product. And what I mean by that is if you go to an AHL game, right? Like you get in the car and you drive up to Lehigh, you're going to see more broken plays. You're going to see more breakaways. You're going to see more exciting things.
The AHL is between college and the NHL, whereas in college, it's a breakneck pace where every player is going so hard and being physical, where then all the way up at the NHL, you have guys that are slowing it down and making better plays. So you get your high end skill is highlighted more and shown more, but you lose some of that hard working mentality and that physicality. Whereas
I think that you lose some excitement.
Yeah,
I really do. And I also think that teams are trying to win games. So I don't want this to sound like I don't understand. But I also think when 3-on-3 overtime started, it was exciting. It is no longer exciting. I think the shootout,
It needs to go. It's done.
it needs to go because I don't need to see a guy moving at a snail's pace. Like a shootout is supposed to be a simulated breakaway. That's not what it is. So instead of trying to come up with fancy rules to fix it, just get rid of it. It doesn't work. It was a way to try to generate buzz. It didn't work. Dump it. A win's a win. A loss is a loss. Get rid. I don't like the regulation.
Extend overtime by 5 minutes. And 3-on-3, you're gonna have a winner.
Well, guys are going to get tired. Like we know that, if you've ever played a tournament before,
the more tired you are, the more mistakes there are, the more
the ice opens up.
Yeah, it's just the way it is.
It's just the way it works. So I think that like a lot of things that they tried to do to get buzz, just as strategy evolved, it changed.
Yep.
That's just the way it goes, right? Like, so I don't think that they need to do anything drastic like widen the ice or anything like that. But I do think that they need to reevaluate. I mean, the things that they tried, like the shootout, it just doesn't work. And then they're going to have to look long-term at their strategy for marketing their sport because I don't want to say it's dying, but it's not growing. We know that. And one of the reasons it's not growing is like, we have a very wonderful program here, the Snyder program, which can bring people who can't afford the sport into it, but kids are priced out, right? Like people like me and you who played, whose parents are working class folks. I don't know how they afford it.
Yeah.
I don't know how they afford it. And how else, and you used to drive down a neighborhood right in the mid 90s and kids would be out in their driveways or out on the street shooting into a net. That doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you the last time I saw a hockey net in a driveway.
Yeah. Yep. All you see is organized stuff.
That's it.
That's it.
So like they have to figure out how they can that's how a sport grows. You have to catch the next generation. They've already lost, right? In terms of audience.
They were doing they're still doing it. The rookie program that's sponsored by the NHLPA, where basically you get 6 weeks of lessons and you get head to toe equipment. It's a really good program, but the problem is it's the next step, and the next step it's people see the price of everything, and just like everything else, the price continues to go up. So it's
but it's to a level with this sport that like you can't be middle class and play the sport organized unless there's an existing program like Snyder that can help you. Otherwise, it just isn't. Even if you get the introductory level stuff, the introductory level equipment, I mean, better than anybody, is as expensive as what the high end equipment used to be. And it's made out of good material. I'm not going to sit here and say that the equipment hasn't come away in terms of technology, but people got to buy it. At the end of the day, people got to buy it. And if I had a kid having to put $300 skates, right, and that's not an expensive skate right now, on a kid that's going to outgrow them in 2 years, or a year, that's a big ask. And that's just skates. That's not your helmet technology. That's, now. I don't know. How does anybody put a goaltender on the ice? I don't know how my parents did it. And now it's triple.
Yeah, it's not fun thinking about it. It's funny. All that being said, there's still players coming out of
South Jersey,
Central PA. Logan Cooley's from Pittsburgh. California, Texas. Hockey's not as in a dire position as it. And it's funny because for other reasons, a sport like football is going to hurt.
Oh, that's coming.
It's coming. It's youth sports in the next 10 to 15 years is going to really change.
Oh yeah, it's already started.
Yeah, between the cost of it, but like the cost issue's always been there with certain sports, and people found a way. But just with the health, and hockey as well, the health aspect of it, you know, um, it's going to come to a head at a certain point because that's just where society's going, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. Oh, Flyers are losing 2-0.
Hey, more power to them.
Go Islanders.
Yeah, more power to them. But yeah, I mean, we're going to see a different, right? Well, we've already seen a different type of athlete enter professional hockey than did 15 years ago, right? The era of the 6'6" center or 6'3" and above center has been dwindling.
Hey, we just had a 6'7" defenseman applied at TCNJ.
Oh, there you go. But that it was everybody, right? Like everybody was 6'3" and above. And the type of athlete and body style based on the change of the physicality, but also the change in training techniques and all of that stuff has really changed what athlete goes in this direction. You wonder where all those 6'3" and 6'5" monsters went off to because it wasn't all the football, but there's going to be an amount that when it comes to football that those kids at younger age just keep sticking with soccer, right? And that's where it goes.
Yeah. Well, we don't need to get.
No, but that's going to be, like the reality is right. How we got here was the ebb and flow of popularity and how kids are the next generation of the fans. And I think that where it dovetails in is when you have a superstar. Some of the reasons we saw hockey nets in kids' driveways was we had a superstar here.
Yep.
When that was going on. And for as nice a player as Giroux was, and I even used the word great player, I think he was a great player. He wasn't a superstar.
Nope.
He wasn't. He had one year where maybe you could.
He was not a generational player.
Not even close. I think that he fits in that tier below, right? A franchise player to perennial all-star, but not a superstar. And that's the difference, right? Like, the Sixers have a player like that right now. We'll see if health will allow that to continue. But it just changes the mentality of the sport. The Eagles have been one of the best franchises in all sports. That's, also part of it. They haven't been as successful as the Pats, but they've basically been the Patriots of the NFC, just with less rings. But they've been competitive pretty much since, 2000?
I would think, oh, my God, they scored. I think Patrick Brown, exactly who you don't want to score the goals. But, yeah, the Eagles, they've consistently pushed. They've been creative. They've been... I'd say since '99, yeah. Since they hired Reed, ironically, they've been a model franchise.
But they stay to who they are, right?
Yep.
Like when you think of the Eagles since that time, and this will dovetail it, and then we can start, wrapping up. But they stay true to what their identity is. What is the Eagles' identity since Andy Reid? Good offensive line, good defensive line.
Yep. Own the line of scrimmage.
That's it. Set your watch. The Eagles will have that. And I think again, when Holmgren moves out, the Flyers lost their way. And I know that it's ever coming back, but that's the reality. They lost all of that identity, right? It was we need to get faster because we saw the lumbering defensemen as the league got smaller, right? And it was like we need to get faster, but they were behind. They've been behind trends. Since
ironically, it may be Homer and Clarkey still talking to Dave Scott about keeping Chuck that may have them stuck in the mud. now. I don't know if you
Yeah,
read. I don't know if you read the network article.
I did, and I have feelings like point taken. I don't think it's fully wrong. Point taken, but I think every franchise does a lot of what the Flyers do, and I don't mean
Yeah.
like all of sports where
No.
guys who have been attached and come and go and
Oh,
come and
yeah.
go.
100%. I just think it's time for a clean slate. Time for Hayes may really get benched tonight. He just took a dumb hooking penalty. um, they just need fresh everything, fresh front office. They need to just clean house. I think, ironically, I think what they have in the locker room in terms of the coaching staff and all that, I think is good. I think, but up top, it just needs. They need a lot of Lysol and clean that shit up.
Yeah, I mean it's time, right? These guys aren't young men. It's time, but I again to it's been time. It's been time to do that. Um, and
Talk about bold. You brought up the Eagles. Like, they went bold. They went out and they got Chip Kelly. Recognized it wasn't working. Cut bait. And then
and that's I think that's just a wise philosophy to have. The sooner you admit a mistake, the sooner you can move on.
yep.
And then they went back, right? Like each time they've gone back home, right? Like you bring in Peterson, that ran its course. Sirianni is still from the Andy tree,
Yep.
and that's kind of they've found their way back to a functional franchise, and I don't know. Like and look, I for years have said the Phillies weren't really a great run franchise, right?
No, they
But
weren't. They
right,
weren't.
but the reality is when they know it's time, they strike. At least since '07 or '06, and you get the
Yeah,
lulls in
they're
between.
since '06. Their biggest issue was knowing when to let go.
Yeah, well,
That was
they
their
take care
biggest
of their
issue.
yeah.
And I think what's held them back up until last year was knowing that we're not developing anyone, so we just have to buy everything.
Yeah.
And that means going over the luxury tax. And it took Dombrowski to come in here to explain that to them. Like, you haven't developed shit. So, like, you need to buy. The only way around it, you need to buy your way out of it. So, and just now, some pieces are starting to come through with Painter and some of the other young guys with Stott and such. So, yeah, it's sad. They're a hard four. The Flyers are just a hard four in the city right now, and
it could change. That my feeling is they're hard four. It could change over time if they were to get a
well,
guy.
yeah. I mean, let's be honest. If Embiid has some, God forbid, not praying for it to happen, even though I'm not a baseball and basketball guy, but definitely want the Sixers to be good. And Embiid is, he's not an asshole. I want.
He's our kind of asshole. He's our kind of asshole.
Yeah, it's true. If he were to have some serious career, ending injury, they're screwed. They're going right back to where they were.
Yeah, well, then they'd have to make a decision, right? And
Yep.
that decision would be: do we try and spackle it, or do we tear it all down and go back again? And I know that everybody hates that thumb in the eye that the process was, but the reality is it gave a big middle finger to the lottery, to kind of everything. Because the reality is the Sixers had a lot of top picks, and they took a lot of consensus guys there that didn't work.
Nope.
Right? And the reality is they had to be bad that long, which was really, when you look at it, like 3 to 4 years. In order to get one, you needed one guy. And I know that
you struck out with the first overall pick twice.
Fultz and Simmons.
What was Okafor?
Okafor was not the number one. I think he was like 3, 2 or 3. I can look it up, but nonetheless, I mean,
the Fultz one is the one that really. Well, who got drafted after Simmons?
We can look it up, but I don't think we really care that much, right?
That's true, but like it's
Fultz. Fultz was after Simmons, but I think there was a gap there. But that was when they said, "We're done doing this. We're ready to compete."
Yeah, it's.
But the reality is I can't beat that franchise up for doing it because they proved a point, and the league went to flat lottery odds for the non-playoff teams.
There should be no lottery.
No, I think that your worst, you get the first pick.
Yep.
And that's just the way it goes.
Why does it work in the NFL? Because there's also no guarantee. There ain't no guarantee.
No, and that's what that's where, and this is a great spot to loop in, and then we can call it a show. The reality is just as we were saying earlier, there's no guarantee when you're picking 18-year-olds that they're going to turn into what you think they're going to be. There's no guarantee they're going to have the work ethic or the mental fortitude to work out. So the idea that we have to dissuade teams who are not really competing from admitting where they are in order to get somebody that's not a guarantee, I feel like only makes bad teams bad for longer. And it's just not always guaranteed. I still think, hockey needs to reevaluate. The last strike they had to get away from the 12-year contracts. They might need to get away from the 8-year contracts. We'll see. But I think that
you see that is one thing. There's not enough drama in the game.
Yeah.
And part of that is the hard cap because their teams can't make moves. They're so up against it. So in order for you to get more drama, you have players on teams that want to move. I mean, Tarasenko has wanted to move, but like, where was he going to go? Who is taking on that salary? He can't.
Yeah.
So they need to institute some sort of luxury
and a better buyout system, but that's for people smarter than us, I think.
Yeah.
So as we always do, I'll bring it up. I know that everybody's times have changed, but I'll bring it up for the sake of it, just to be why is that in the background? Just to be a true team player. Here we are. So Football Smack Talk show, that seems to still be Mondays. They're on right before us. Diamond Club is on hiatus because baseball season. Pitchers and catchers are going to be soon, though. So they're slated to be on now, but I think Chris said that's changing.
Yeah.
We're on at 7:30 on Mondays. I don't know all that's still here at these set times, but I bring this up to say there's a whole lineup of shows on Philly Sports Alliance. We are one of those shows, one of many. There is also CEV that Chris is a part of that has their own network. So check out CEV Sports. Again, thank you to Steven Rosblock and the Party Snakes for our awesome intro song that I was able to get put together. Otherwise, I hope that we are back next week. We will see. Until then, guys.
My prediction is 31-23 Eagles, go Birds.
All right. Until then, guys.